Hello YouTube. About a month ago the submissions for my 2025 Elder Scrolls Lore exam have closed. And I want to thank everyone who participated in it. I got over 500 submissions this year. That was a lot more work to grade than I thought it would be. But I'm happy to say that everyone's been graded now, including the retakes, because everyone who failed the original exam got a retake from me. At least if you submitted it in time. Now, today I want to go over a little bit of the statistics of the exam, and I'll give you the answers to the exam, as by now nobody needs to do it anymore, so I can just give the answers out freely. Now, first of all, congratulations to everyone who managed to get one of the Elder Scrolls Lore degrees that you see right here on the wall. Over 80% of you, to be precise 82.17% of you, managed to get a sufficient result. And a sufficient result was a grade of 5.5 out of 10 or higher. Out of that percentage, 10.5% of you got this star of excellence on your degree, which means that you got 1 mistake or 0 mistakes. And of those 10.17%, about half of that, so 4.7% of the total, got 0 mistakes. Well done to those people, I salute you. Because this exam was quite a little bit more challenging than a lot of you seem to assume that it would be.
Alright, now I think it's a good time to go through some of the answers to the exam, just so you can perhaps see what you did wrong. Now, this was the original exam, and I'll just go through every question, tell you where the correct answer was to be found, and also where you got points for the essay questions. Also, fun little statistic, the people who actually submitted it later, so who actually took time to study, they got a significantly better result on average than the people who did not. Which is pretty funny, to be honest, since a lot of people did it really quickly, and people who did it really quickly, they tended to have failed the exam. Because it was actually a bit more challenging than a lot of people thought it would be, as I said in the introduction to this video. Now, one final statistic before we move on. The average grade to the exam was around a 7.0 out of 10. Something like that. Alright, let's go through some of the answers to the exam. Now, first of all, the first question that we had was, what region of Cyrodiil is best known for its wine production? The correct answer was the West Weald, and the correct answer was to be found in my video on the wines of Oblivion, where I went into the old wine production. Now, the second question, this question is actually the question that the most people had wrong, which is pretty funny, because when a person in a damp region of Tamriel dies, the people of the area need to make sure to remove the body as soon as possible to prevent an infestation of a certain creature. What creature is this? The correct answer was in my Bugs of Tamriel video, Bugs and Insects. A lot of people thought it was the bog blight, because that was a topic that I covered recently, but the correct answer was the Horvor, which is a sort of tick-like creature, one of my least favorite insects of the Elder Scrolls universe, since I just don't like them at all. And that creature tends to infest an area really quickly after there's a dead body in the area. So the correct answer was Horvor. Let's see if we go through the answers, by the way. You can see that most people actually chose the bog blight. Oh, actually no. The biggest share of the answer was the Horvor, with bog blight in a close second. But yeah, a lot of people unfortunately had it wrong. This was the question that most people got wrong. Let's see, next question. What Tamrielic war led to a city being divided into two halves, separated by a wall for quite a few years? Correct answer was the War of Bendermark, and the correct answer to that was in my video on Tamriel's Berlin Wall. It's actually a pretty funny story. Like, it's not literally the Berlin Wall, of course, because, you know, it's not Berlin, but it does divide the city of Dragonstar into two, with two different governments, and watch the video, it's pretty good. Alright, next one. What Tamrielic race or creature primarily worships the strange and mysterious deity called Zrib? That's the Falmer, and we covered that in my video on the Falmer religion. That one, I think like 90% of people got correct. What happened in the year 1E 2920, or the year 2920 of the First Era, that led to the start of the Second Era? The correct answer was that the last Cyrodiilic emperor of the Riemann dynasty was assassinated, and after that the potentates took over, the Akaviri potentates. The correct answer to that you could find either in my really old video on the Riemann Dynasty or in my introduction to the Elder Scrolls lore video. What non-High Elf princess unexpectedly became a queen on the Somerset Isles? That was Princess Morgaya the Dunmer. We covered that in my video on then Queen Morgaya. She makes an appearance in Daggerfall and then her lore got expanded later. Funny thing is, all of these are actual princesses, except for this one, Princess Gwaring the Bosmer. Gwaring is actually a Bosmer who becomes the Green Lady in the Elder Scrolls Online. Uranenya was the princess of the Aelids that actually of an Aeliid kingdom that actually got like hitched to a Dwemer and then transformed into a robot. Pretty funny story. And Princess Elisana was basically one of the two who was basically the one who was vying over the throne with the brother of Morgaya in Daggerfall. So that's pretty funny. Alright, next up, what Tamrielic Emperor was known as an absolute party animal? That was Brazilus Dor. We covered that in my video on Tamriel's party emperor, which I called him, since some of the lore that Gold Road gave him literally made him like this party animal that really didn't want to do, didn't want to have anything to do with ruling the country, and he just gave like his rule to like a competent person, like his potentate. And it was like, peace, I'm going to go and party, you guys figure it out. Seems pretty bad, but it wasn't, since his rule is remembered as one of the most stable of the Riemann dynasty, simply because he didn't try to do anything for personal glory, and just left it in the hands of a competent person. Pelagius IV was the father of Uriel Septim VII that we see in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion and also Daggerfall at the beginning. Gorius was an emperor of the Alessian dynasty. It had nothing to do with parties. And Durkarech the Black Drake was the first emperor of the Longhouse dynasty, which we see in the Second Era, after the fall of the Riemann Empire. Alright, what culture came up with the martial art that requires an extremely long setup during the fight, working towards trapping their opponent? This question I put in specifically for people who studied. For the very simple reason that like this question is phrased in such a way where it's hard to Google it. And I presume also hard to ChatGPT it, maybe unless you throw the entire USB into ChatGPT, but that can't be helped nowadays. But like this one, just together with the Horvor question, was kind of the question where I was like, yeah, this will test whether someone actually studied or not. And the correct answer was the Red Guard, who had the cycle or circle of blood. This is bad, I don't fully remember what it was called, which is a martial art that the Red Guards came up with. The Khajiit actually do have a lot more martial arts. They have claw dances. Orsmer, I don't believe from top of my head, had a martial art of their own. Not completely sure. Akaviri, we know that they had them. We just don't know what they're called, and we don't know what their fighting styles are. Redguard was the correct answer. Alright, what Tamrielic culture is responsible for alcoholic drinks made out of fermented meat? That's of course the Bosmer. Because of the Green Pact, they are not allowed to harm the plants of Valenwood, but they are allowed to harm animals. So, pretty obvious answer. A lot of people had that correct. Which one of Uriel's Septim... Oh, by the way, this was in my video on alcohols. And this one, the correct answer was in my video on martial arts. And yeah, this one we already covered. Which one of Emperor Uriel's Septim VII's children was killed by their own spouse? The correct answer was Prince Geldal Septim. It was in my video on Uriel Septim's other children besides Martin. Alright, then the essay questions. The essay questions, the first of them was, explain in 100 words or less why Redguard society needs the Ashaba, but hates and despises them. Now, in my video on the Ashaba, basically Tamriel's Witchers, we covered how they are disliked because the Ashaba fight the undead, and fighting the undead is seen as sacrilege in Redguard society because they venerate the dead to a great degree and see them as really honorable. Even the undead, they're generally not allowed to touch, and that's why they build giant mausoleums. Watch my video on the Ashaba for more information about that. Basically, those giant mausoleums make it so that the undead are trapped inside instead of them having to hurt them. That makes Redguard society pretty vulnerable to like attacks from necromancers and the like. That's why they have the Ashaba. So your first point you got for basically saying that the Redguards venerate the dead in some way or see them as holy or anything in that direction. The second point was that leaves them vulnerable and thus the Ashaba fight the undead. And the third point was if you mentioned that because they fight the undead, Redguard society despises them because they then think that they are cursed or dirty / unclean. Those are the 3 points that you could get. All the previous answers, the multiple choice questions, got you 1 point, but this one got you 3 points. The final question was, explain in 100 words or less what led to the fall of the Iliad Empire. That was in my video on the Iliad Empire, which I published pretty recently after the release of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered. And the correct answer to that was basically, point number 1, the Iliads already had their own civil war in the Narfensal Schism, which really weakened the Iliad Empire, which consisted out of multiple small states. You got a point if you mentioned Narfensal Schism, you got a point if you mentioned Iliad Civil War, and you got a point if you mentioned internal conflicts between Aedra and Daedra worshipping Iliads. That's all 1 point. If you mentioned something in that direction, I wasn't too strict with it. And then the second point was you got if you mentioned slavery and how the slaves rose up under the Alessia, so under slave queen Alessia. And the final point was you got the point if you mentioned the semi-divine influence in the Alessian slave rebellion, so the influence of Pelennor Whitestreak and Morihos the bull, Morihos the man bull. No, Manbull was actually the title of his son, I believe. Yeah, Balhas and Manbull, not of Morihos. Morihos was semi-divine. Half god. Yeah, let's see. So the first question, a lot of people had right. The Horvor question was definitely the one with the least correct answers. Yeah, Bendermark, a lot of people got correct. The Falmer was this was probably the most correctly made question, with 90% of people getting the Falmer correct. What happened? This one was also the Cyrillic Emperor's assassination was also pretty easy for a lot of people. This one as well, as you can see, a lot of people got the correct answer, at least 70% got the correct answer. And then also the question about the martial art, only 202 people got it right, so less than half of people. So this one and the Horvor question kind of, show who studied and who didn't. This one was pretty obvious. Also, a lot of people got this one wrong, which I was kind of surprised about, since that was a pretty recent video. And I also mentioned it in my video on Mythic Dawn. So I was kind of surprised by that, but hey, it can happen. As you can see, we had a lot of answers like this, but I corrected it in a different way. I just downloaded the spreadsheet, which made it a lot easier. Anyway, I want to thank everyone again who took part in this whole lore exam. It was so much fun to do, at least on my side. It was a lot of work. There were over 500 submissions, and in the end, I started relying on automation a bit for the multiple choice questions, since I graded those by hand at the start as well, but it started to be undoable, man. I am a physics teacher in real life. I am used to grading tests, but I'm not used to grading 500 tests. This is 422, but there were more than 500 submissions, since at least 90 people that did it last year submitted it in the last year's exam version, which were the same questions. It just had an option over here. Oh, I have to cut that out. I accidentally went to people's names. That's not good. It just had an option at the bottom where you could upload last year's degree, so that I could add something to your degree, add a second date and add some different symbols compared to the people who didn't do it last year. That was it. Thank you so much for participating. It was a lot of fun. And see you in 2026 when we do this again, hopefully.